It arrived on a Tuesday morning, October 17th, 2023, precisely at 9:47 a.m. I remember the timestamp because I was in the middle of a budget review meeting for the Halstead Bridge project, staring at projected steel costs on the conference room screen. My phone, lying face down on the polished mahogany table as per company policy, vibrated softly. A single, short buzz. Usually, I'd ignore it, but something, perhaps the atypical brevity of the vibration, made me glance down during a lull in the presentation. The sender, Clara. The message, William, I can't do this anymore. I want a divorce. I've moved my things out. Don't contact me directly, my lawyer will be in touch. That was it. 27 words delivered via text message, ending 18 years of marriage. No explanation, no conversation, just a digital guillotine severing our life together while I debated the merits of galvanized versus stainless steel bolts. The room felt suddenly cold, the projected numbers swimming before my eyes. I excused myself, citing a sudden headache, my voice remarkably steady despite the tremor in my hands. Back in the sterile quiet of my office, the reality began to sink in, not as a wave of grief, but as a chilling, hollow certainty. She was gone. Just like that. Hours later, sitting numbly at home in the unnervingly silent house, she hadn't exaggerated. Her closets were bare, her drawers empty. I sank into my old armchair. The air tasted stale, thick with the absence of her perfume, her clutter, her presence. It was surreal. We hadn't fought spectacularly. There were no screaming matches, no throne plates. Just this. An ending delivered with the impersonal efficiency of a termination notice. My mind, trained for logic and process from years managing complex engineering projects, struggled to compute the variables. What had I missed? Where was the precursor, the warning sign? Driven by a need for something, anything information, I opened my laptop. Muscle memory took me to our shared email account, an old Gmail address, william.clara.home@gmail.com, created years ago for household bills, online subscriptions, and communications about the house renovation. We barely used it actively anymore, mostly relying on our personal accounts, but it remained logged in on my home computer, a relic of our initial intertwined digital lives. And there it was. An unread email notification badge, glowing red. Not unusual, it was mostly junk mail and automated receipts. But below the usual spam, nestled amongst confirmations from streaming services and newsletters we never read, was a chain of emails with a subject line that stopped my breath: our future, final steps. The most recent message was sent just yesterday, October 16th, from Clara to a name I didn't immediately recognize, Marcus Thorne. The preview text showed Clara writing, "He suspects nothing. The house is clear. Text sent tomorrow a.m. Freedom tastes sweet." My mouse hovered, trembling slightly, over the subject line. She'd ended our marriage with a 27-word text message, but in her haste for freedom, Clara, my meticulous, organized wife, had forgotten one crucial detail: she hadn't logged out of our shared email account. The guillotine had fallen, but the executioner had inadvertently left behind her detailed confession and plans. The chill I'd felt earlier solidified into something colder, harder. Ice. Our story began not with a whirlwind romance, but with a comfortable certainty. We met in our mid-20s, introduced by mutual friends at a low-key barbecue. I was an engineer, already settling into my career at a large infrastructure firm, mapping out projects, timelines, and a stable future. Clara worked in marketing for a boutique agency, vibrant and full of ideas that seemed galaxies away from my world of concrete and stress tolerances. Yet we clicked. She admired my steadiness, my methodical approach to life, and I was drawn to her energy, her way of seeing possibilities where I saw potential problems. We dated for 2 years, a period marked by comfortable dinners, exploring the city, meeting families, and gradually intertwining our lives. There was no grand, dramatic proposal. It was a quiet conversation over dinner at our favorite Italian restaurant, Gino's, on May 4th, 2005. We both knew it was the right next step. We bought a modest house in a quiet suburban neighborhood, the kind with mature trees and kids riding bikes on the sidewalks. It needed work, a lot of it, and tackling the renovations became our first major joint project. I handled the structural planning, the endless permits, the budget spreadsheets, my professional skills bleeding into personal life. Clara chose the colors, the textures, the furniture that made the shell a home. We were a good team. My career progressed steadily. Long hours were common, especially when projects hit critical phases, but the work was rewarding, stable, and provided us with a comfortable life. I wasn't flashy, never felt the need for expensive cars or designer labels. My focus was always on building security, paying down the mortgage, maxing out retirement contributions, ensuring we had a solid foundation. Clara's career path was less linear. She moved between agencies, eventually deciding to start her own freelance consulting business about 10 years into our marriage. I supported her completely. We refinanced the house to free up capital for her startup using a significant chunk of our savings. I took on extra side projects, drafting work on weekends to ensure our finances remained stable while her business found its footing. I believed in her vision, her drive. I remember nights she'd be stressed about clients or cash flow, and I'd sit with her, helping her draft proposals or just listening, offering quiet encouragement. It felt like the right thing to do, the supportive partnership we had implicitly agreed upon. Life settled into a rhythm. Weekday commutes, shared meals, weekend chores, occasional vacations planned meticulously months in advance. We weren't the couple jetting off to exotic locales spontaneously. We were the ones researching travel insurance and comparing hotel reviews. Perhaps it sounds boring to some, but to me it was solid. Dependable. I found comfort in that predictability, in the knowledge that we were building something lasting, brick by methodical brick. I handled the finances, paying bills from our joint checking account, managing investments, filing taxes. Clara trusted me with it, often joking that spreadsheets made her head spin. I took pride in being the reliable one, the anchor. Looking back, maybe that was part of the problem. I was so focused on maintaining the structure, I didn't notice the foundations were eroding. I wasn't a demonstrative husband in the traditional sense, perhaps. No spontaneous bouquets or grand romantic gestures. My love language was acts of service, ensuring the cars were maintained, fixing the leaky faucet before she even mentioned it, making sure her business financials were in order, providing that unwavering stability she said she valued. I thought that was enough. I thought our shared history, the home we built, the life we carefully constructed, was testament to our commitment. I was loyal, stable, and utterly unprepared for the idea that it wasn't what she wanted anymore, or perhaps that it was simply cover for something else entirely. The signs were there, of course. They always are, aren't they? Hindsight illuminates them with brutal clarity. At the time, they were just minor deviations, easily explained away, anomalies in the predictable pattern of our lives. Around 18 months ago, maybe early 2022, Clara started becoming more protective of her phone. It used to lie casually on the kitchen counter or the bedside table. Suddenly, it was always screened down, often in her pocket or bag, even at home. Texts would arrive, and she'd angle her body away slightly to read them, offering vague explanations if I asked. Just work stuff. Or spam. It felt odd. A small crack in our usual transparency, but I chalked it up to the demands of her freelance business, maybe sensitive client communications. Then came the networking events and client dinners that ran late, often cropping up with little notice. Clara, who usually planned her schedule meticulously, became surprisingly spontaneous with her evening commitments. There was the conference in Denver in April 2022 she insisted on attending alone, saying it was purely technical workshops I wouldn't find interesting. The weekend marketing retreat in Napa Valley that summer, where reception was supposedly spotty, explaining her infrequent check-ins. Each instance, viewed in isolation, seemed plausible. She was building her business, networking was crucial. I was busy with my own demanding projects, often working late myself. It was easy to rationalize, to accept her explanations. Why wouldn't I? I trusted her. Intimacy changed too gradually. It wasn't a sudden rejection, but a slow cooling. More often, she'd plead tiredness, stress from work, or a headache. Affection became less spontaneous, hugs felt shorter, less connected. I noticed, felt a pang of unease, but attributed it to the natural ebbs and flows of a long marriage, the stresses of work, maybe my own fatigue. I even tried initiating conversations about it, suggesting we take a vacation, just the two of us, to reconnect. She agreed enthusiastically but always found reasons to postpone. A looming client deadline, a potential new project. Financial oddities began to surface, subtle at first. Small, unexplained withdrawals from our joint account, categorized vaguely as business expenses, in her minimal contributions to our shared tracking spreadsheet. When I queried them gently, she waved it off. "Oh, that was for software." Or "client entertaining. I forgot the receipt." Since I managed the main household finances and investments, and her business income fluctuated, I didn't push too hard. I didn't want to seem like I was micromanaging her business, the venture I had supported from the start. The biggest red flag, the one I truly reprimand myself for dismissing, occurred about 6 months before the end, around April 2023. I came home early one Wednesday hoping to surprise her. Her car was in the driveway, but the house was quiet. I found her in our home office, hastily closing browser windows on her laptop as I entered. She seemed flustered, overly bright, explaining she was researching a potential competitor. But I caught a glimpse of the screen. It wasn't a business website. It looked like a travel booking site showing flights to Italy. When I asked, she laughed it off, saying she was daydreaming, planning a someday trip for us. It felt off, her reaction too quick, too defensive. Suspicion, cold and unwelcome, began to coil in my gut. I started paying closer attention, not actively snooping, but observing. Noticing the way she smiled at her phone, the slight hesitation before answering questions about her day, the increasing vagueness about her finances. The solid ground I thought we stood on felt subtly unstable, like walking on packed earth that might conceal a sinkhole. But the idea of infidelity, of Clara actively deceiving me, still seemed unthinkable. It contradicted the 18 years of shared history, the person I thought I knew better than anyone. I pushed the suspicion down, telling myself I was being paranoid, letting work stress bleed into my personal life. I didn't want to believe the alternative. It was easier, far easier, to accept the plausible explanations than to confront the terrifying possibility that our entire life together was built on a lie. The email chain titled "Our Future Final Steps" was devastatingly comprehensive. Marcus Thorne, the recipient, was not just some random stranger. A quick search in my own email archives revealed him. Marcus Thorne, CEO of Thorne Development Group, a property developer Clara had supposedly landed as a major client about 2 years prior. A client she frequently cited as the reason for late nights, weekend work, and that networking trip to Denver. Clicking through the chain, reading messages sent back and forth over months, felt like watching a slow-motion demolition of my life. They weren't just planning a future. They were meticulously dismantling my present. There were emails discussing their affair, explicit details about hotel rendezvous disguised as business meetings, critiques of my perceived shortcomings. "He's so predictable," Clara wrote in one message dated June 12, 2023, utterly passionless. And most chillingly, their strategy for her exit from our marriage. They'd nicknamed it Project Freedom. There were discussions about asset division. Clara, guided by Marcus, had been systematically siphoning funds from her business account, the one I'd helped her set up, into a separate personal account I had no knowledge of. Attached to an email from August 2nd, 2023, with the subject, Financial Strategy Update, was a password-protected spreadsheet. The password? Freedom 2023. Inside, a detailed log of transfers, hidden assets, and notes on how to undervalue her business during divorce proceedings. They discussed selling the house, which was solely in my name initially but had been transferred into joint tenancy years ago at Clara's insistence. "It makes me feel more secure, Will," she'd said. Marcus advised her on tactics to maximize her share, leveraging emotional arguments about her investment in the home renovations. Worst of all were the messages about timing. An email from Clara to Marcus, dated September 28, 2023. "Almost there. Just need to finalize the Q3 business reports he helps with, then I can pull the trigger. Targeting mid-October. Easier to make a clean break before the holidays." She was using my financial acumen, my willingness to help her succeed, to prepare her exit strategy. The text message wasn't a moment of spontaneous despair. It was a calculated step in their prearranged plan. Reading those words, seeing my trust weaponized against me, didn't ignite rage. Instead, a profound, icy calm settled over me. The shock dissipated, replaced by a cold, clear focus. My engineering mind took over, assessing the structural failure, analyzing the data points, formulating a response plan. There would be no screaming, no desperate pleas. My response would be methodical, precise, and built on the evidence she had so carelessly left behind. Over the next few days, while outwardly maintaining a facade of numb grief, which wasn't entirely untrue, the emotional impact was a deep, throbbing ache beneath the surface. I meticulously gathered my ammunition. I used a dedicated USB drive, purchased specifically for this purpose. First, I downloaded the entire email chain between Clara and Marcus from the shared account, ensuring full headers were included. I took timestamped screenshots of every single message, saving them in multiple formats, PNG, PDF. I accessed the password-protected spreadsheet, downloaded it, and saved copies. I cross-referenced the transfers mentioned in the spreadsheet with the statements from our joint account and her known business account, which I still had historical access to via our shared online banking profile from when I helped manage it. The pattern was undeniable, small, regular transfers disguised as business expenses, totaling a significant sum over 18 months. Then, I logged into our old cloud storage account, linked to the shared email. Another oversight. There, in a folder labeled Marketing Ideas, I found copies of invoices Clara had submitted to Thorn Development, inflated, vague descriptions of services rendered. Alongside them, however, were hotel booking confirmations and restaurant receipts from cities where she claimed to be meeting other clients, but the dates matched her meetings with Marcus. Receipts for expensive dinners, spa treatments, weekend getaways, all paid from her business account, effectively using funds I had helped secure. On Monday, October 23rd, 1 week after the text message, I took a personal day. I didn't call divorce lawyers randomly. I researched firms specializing in complex financial settlements and forensic accounting in divorce cases. I scheduled a consultation with Eleanor Vance, a highly recommended partner at a reputable downtown firm known for her sharp, no-nonsense approach. I compiled everything onto the USB drive organized into clear folders: email communications, financial discrepancies, hidden assets spreadsheet, supporting documents, invoices, and receipts. I printed key documents, highlighting the most damning sections. My goal wasn't vengeance in the fiery sense. It was justice. It was ensuring that the Project Freedom they planned wouldn't be funded by the assets I had worked my entire adult life to build, assets she planned to take based on deceit. My strategy was simple: complete transparency, backed by irrefutable proof, delivered calmly and strategically through the proper legal channels. Clara wanted a clean break? She would get one, but on terms dictated by the truth she inadvertently revealed. The first communication from Clara's lawyer, a Mr. Abernathy from a small suburban practice, arrived a week later. It was a standard, almost template-like letter proposing an amicable dissolution, suggesting mediation to divide assets fairly and equitably. It outlined Clara's initial proposal. She wanted 50% of the proceeds from the house sale, 50% of our joint savings and investments, and lifetime alimony, citing her lower earning potential as a freelancer and her non-financial contributions to the marriage. There was no mention of her business assets beyond a cursory valuation that seemed suspiciously low, nor any reference to the funds she had siphoned. It was exactly the opening gambit outlined in her emails with Marcus. My lawyer, Eleanor Vance, reviewed the proposal, then looked at the evidence I had provided, neatly organized in a binder I'd prepared. A slow smile spread across her face. "Mr. Henderson," she said, her voice crisp and assured, "this is what we call a gift. They have no idea what's coming." Our response, drafted by Eleanor, was polite but firm. We rejected their initial proposal outright. We agreed to mediation but stated our asset declaration would be comprehensive. We attached a preliminary list of assets we expected to be disclosed, including specific details about Clara's consulting business bank accounts, listing the account numbers I'd found referenced in the emails, and requesting full financial statements for the past 3 years. We also formally requested documentation related to her business dealings with Thorn Development. The change in tone from Abernathy's office was immediate. A flustered phone call, a request for clarification, followed by a revised, less ambitious proposal a few days later. They were clearly scrambling. Clara must have realized her digital trail had been discovered. The mediation session was scheduled for mid-November at a neutral office downtown. I walked in feeling strangely calm, dressed in my usual work suit. Eleanor was beside me, radiating quiet confidence. Clara arrived with Abernathy, looking pale and drawn. She avoided my gaze. Marcus Thorne was not present, naturally. The session began predictably with Abernathy reiterating Clara's contributions and her need for support. Then Eleanor took the floor. Calmly, methodically, she laid out our position. She didn't raise her voice, didn't resort to accusations. Instead, she presented facts. She referenced specific email dates and subjects. She produced bank statements showing the systematic withdrawals Clara had made. She presented the spreadsheet, freedom2023.xlsx, detailing the hidden account. She showed the inflated invoices to Thorn Development alongside the corresponding hotel receipts for Marcus and Clara's trips paid from the business account. She pointed out that these trips, disguised as business expenses, constituted dissipation of marital assets and potential tax fraud. Abernathy stammered. Clara stared down at the table, her knuckles white where she gripped her pen. Eleanor then presented our counter-proposal. We would agree to the house sale, but the proceeds would be divided based on initial contribution and accounting for the funds Clara had secretly withdrawn. We demonstrated that a significant portion of her business setup capital came directly from my earnings and the home equity loan I co-signed and largely paid down. We argued that her business, far from being modest, had significant hidden value and cash flow evidenced by her own records and spending patterns. We proposed that my retirement accounts, built mostly before and during the early years of marriage through my employment, remain solely mine. Given her documented deception and hidden assets, any claim for alimony was unwarranted. Furthermore, Eleanor subtly hinted that the evidence of potentially fraudulent invoicing involving Thorn Development could have wider implications if not resolved amicably within the divorce proceedings. It wasn't blackmail, it was a statement of fact regarding potential legal exposure. The color drained completely from Clara's face. Abernathy asked for a recess. They returned 30 minutes later. The fight was gone. Abernathy stated that Clara was willing to accept our terms for asset division, forgoing any claim to my retirement funds or alimony, provided the matter was settled swiftly and confidentially. The house was sold quickly. After accounting for the dissipated funds traced back to Clara and the initial equity calculations, my share was considerably larger than the 50% she initially demanded. Her business assets were properly valued and the hidden account was factored into the settlement. I didn't need to expose the affair publicly or contact Marcus Thorne or his wife. The financial and documentary evidence was enough leverage. The justice was clinical, financial, and executed entirely within the legal framework. As I signed the final divorce decree on January 15, 2024, there wasn't triumph, but a quiet sense of closure. Project Freedom had been completed, just not the way Clara and Marcus had planned. Life after Clara feels different. Quieter, certainly. The house, now sold, has been replaced by a modern, minimalist apartment downtown, closer to my office. It's smaller, easier to manage, and holds no ghosts of a life built on flawed foundations. The silence that initially felt unnerving has become peaceful. It's my space, reflecting my taste, my routines. There was a period of adjustment, of course. Grief ambushed me at odd moments, seeing a couple holding hands, hearing a song we used to like, the sheer habit of expecting her presence. But the cold anger from the discovery phase eventually thawed, replaced by a sort of resigned acceptance and, eventually, a profound sense of relief. The meticulous documentation and strategic approach channeled through Eleanor Vance allowed me to navigate the divorce without descending into messy, public recriminations. It protected my financial future, the security I had worked so hard to build. Knowing I hadn't been taken advantage of, that the truth had prevailed through logic and evidence, provided a unique kind of emotional closure. It wasn't about revenge anymore, it was about reclaiming control and ensuring fairness in the face of profound betrayal. I sometimes wonder about Clara and Marcus. I heard through the grapevine that Thorne Development faced some unexpected financial scrutiny later that year, though I don't know the details or if it was connected. Clara, I believe, moved out of state. Our paths haven't crossed and I have no desire for them to. The 18 years we shared cannot be erased, but they now feel like a closed chapter, a previous volume in my life story. I learned hard lessons about trust, complacency, and the importance of seeing people as they are, not just as you wish them to be. I realized that my focus on stability, while valuable, had perhaps made me blind to the emotional undercurrents, the subtle shifts in the person I lived with. I'm more observant now, more attuned to the nuances in interactions, both personal and professional. I'm still methodical, still value stability, but I understand that life requires more than just solid foundations. It needs ongoing maintenance, communication, and a willingness to address cracks before they become chasms. I haven't rushed into dating. Healing takes time, and rebuilding trust, especially in myself and my judgment, is a process. But I'm not closed off. I've reconnected with old friends, pursued hobbies I'd let slide, hiking, photography, and found a quiet satisfaction in my own company, something I hadn't experienced in nearly 2 decades. The betrayal was a defining moment, a traumatic event that reshaped my world. But emerging from it, I feel stronger, more self-aware, and strangely liberated. She ended our marriage with a text message, intending to start her Project Freedom built on deceit. She forgot about the digital breadcrumbs, the unlocked door to our shared past. And in doing so, inadvertently, she gave me the tools not for revenge, but for my own quiet, dignified, and ultimately more satisfying liberation. The future is unwritten, no longer a joint project plan, but a blank page. And for the first time in a long time, that feels like an opportunity, not a liability.